Random House Audio presents The Power of a Positive No. How to say no and still get to yes. This is William Ury. Author's Preface. Getting to Know. If your baby gets even a cold, she could die, the doctor announced almost offhandedly to my wife and me as we were finishing an appointment. My wife was cradling our infant daughter Gabriella in her arms. Our hearts froze with fear. Gabriella had been born with serious problems in her spinal column, and this doctor's appointment was only the beginning of what would prove to be a long journey through the medical system. Hundreds of consultations, dozens of treatments, and 7 major surgeries in 7 years. While our journey is still ongoing, I'm happy to say that despite her physical challenges, Gabriella is healthy and happy. Looking back over the past 8 years of negotiating the maze of doctors, nurses, hospitals, and insurance companies, I realize how the process has called on all of the skills I have learned over the years in helping others get to yes with their negotiation issues. I also realized that for me personally, the key skill I needed to develop to protect my daughter and our family was saying no. It began with saying no to the communication style of doctors, who, however well-intentioned, created unnecessary levels of fear and anxiety in the hearts of parents and patient. It continued with saying no to behaviors, such as medical residents and students barging noisily into Gabriella's hospital room in the wee hours of the morning, and treating her as if she were not a living person. In my work life, it meant saying no to dozens of invitations, requests, and urgent demands to give my time, precious time I needed to spend with family or researching medical issues. But my no's needed to be nice. The doctors and nurses, after all, had my child's life in their hands. They themselves were under huge levels of stress in a dysfunctional medical system that limited them to spending only a few minutes with each patient. My wife and I needed to learn to pause before responding in order to make sure that our no's were not only powerful, but respectful. Like all good no's, ours were in the service of a higher yes. In this case, a yes to our daughter's health and well-being. Our no's, in short, were intended to be not negative, but positive no's. They served to protect our daughter and create the possibility of a better life for her and ourselves. We were not always successful, of course, but we learned over time to be more effective. This audiobook is about the crucial art of delivering a positive no in every area of life. I am by training an anthropologist, a student of human nature and behavior. I am by profession a negotiation specialist, a teacher, consultant, and mediator. I am by passion a seeker of peace. Ever since I was a child witnessing quarrels at the family dinner table, I've wondered if there was a better way of dealing with our differences than destructive arguments and fights. Going to school in Europe only 15 years after the end of the Second World War, with the memories still alive and the material scars still visible, made me wonder all the more. I grew up in the generation that lived under the threat, seemingly distant but constantly present, of a Third World War, one that put humanity's very survival in question. We had a nuclear bomb shelter at school, and late-night conversations with friends about what we wanted to do with our lives sometimes ended up in speculation about whether we would even have a future. I felt then, and feel even more strongly now, that there has to be a better way of protecting our societies and ourselves than threatening one another with mass destruction. In pursuit of answers to this dilemma, I became a professional student of human conflict. Not content to remain only an observer, I sought to apply what I was learning by becoming a negotiator and mediator. Over the past 3 decades, I've worked as a third party trying to resolve situations ranging from family disputes to coal mine strikes, corporate conflicts, and ethnic wars in the Middle East, Europe, Asia, and Africa. I've also had the opportunity to listen and give counsel to thousands of individuals and hundreds of organizations and government agencies on how to negotiate agreement even under the most challenging circumstances. In the course of my work, I've witnessed the huge waste and needless suffering destructive fights can cause, broken families and friendships, ruinous strikes and lawsuits, and failed organizations. I have been in war zones and seen the terror that violence strikes in the hearts of innocents. Ironically, perhaps, I've also seen some situations that made me wish there was more conflict and resistance. Situations where spouses and children were silently suffering abuse, employees were being grossly mistreated by their bosses, or whole societies were living in fear under the yoke of totalitarian dictatorships. From my base at Harvard's program on negotiation, I've worked on developing better ways to deal with our differences. 25 years ago, Roger Fisher and I co-authored a book called Getting to Yes, which focuses on how to reach an agreement that is beneficial for both sides. It became a bestseller, I believe, because it reminds people of the common sense principles they may already know, but often forget to apply. A decade later, I wrote Getting Past No, in response to the most common question I received from readers of the first book. How do you negotiate cooperatively when the other side is not interested? How do you get to yes with difficult people and in difficult situations? Yet over the years, I've come to realize that getting to yes is only half the picture, and it is, if anything, the easier half. As one company president, a client of mine, told me, "My people know how to get to yes. That's not the problem. It's saying no that's tough for them." Or, as long-term British Prime Minister Tony Blair put it, the art of leadership is not saying yes, it's saying no. Indeed, not long after Getting to Yes was published, a cartoon appeared in the Boston Globe. A man in a suit and tie was asking a librarian for a good book on negotiation. "This one's quite popular," the librarian answered, handing him a copy of Getting to Yes. "Yes isn't what I had in mind," the man countered. Up to this point, I'd been working on the assumption that the chief problem behind destructive conflict was an inability to get to yes. People didn't know how to reach agreements. But I was missing something essential. For even when agreements are reached, they are often unstable or unsatisfying because the real underlying issues have been avoided or smoothed over, the problem only deferred. I slowly came to appreciate that the main stumbling block is often not an inability to get to yes, but a prior inability to get to no. All too often, we cannot bring ourselves to say no when we want to and know we should. Or we do say no, but say it in a way that blocks agreement and destroys relationships. We submit to inappropriate demands, injustice, even abuse, or we engage in destructive fighting in which everyone loses. When Roger Fisher and I wrote Getting to Yes, we were responding to the challenge of adversarial conflict and the increasing need for cooperative negotiation in families, at work, and in the larger world. The need for getting to yes clearly remains, but now the more immediate and pressing need is for people to be able to say no in a positive way that enables them to stand up for what they value without destroying their relationships. No is of equal importance to yes, and indeed is the precondition to saying yes effectively. You cannot truly say yes to one request if you cannot say no to others. No, in this sense, comes before yes. This audiobook, The Power of a Positive No, completes what I've come to understand as a trilogy for me that began with Getting to Yes and continued with Getting Past No, where the focus of Getting to Yes is on both sides reaching an agreement, and the focus of Getting Past No is on the other side, overcoming their objections and resistance to cooperation. The focus of The Power of a Positive No is on your side, on learning how to assert and defend your interests. Since the logical sequence is to start from your own side, I've come to see The Power of a Positive No not so much as a sequel to the other two books, but more like a prequel. The Power of a Positive No provides a much-needed foundation for Getting to Yes and Getting Past No. Each book stands alone, yet complements and enhances the others. I see The Power of a Positive No
Sample complete. Ready to continue?